class once again. Today we are going to read the first chapter of The Magician's Nephew. Before we start, I'd like to ask you a question. Why do people travel around the world? Try to guess. Why do we travel around the world? Well, there isn't actually a single answer to that question. We travel for a number of reasons. Firstly, people travel around the world to trade, to do business. Secondly, some people travel around the world to preach their religion. Thirdly, some people travel just to take control of other lands. And there are some other people who travel around the world just because they are driven by a sense of adventure. We're going to read the first chapter of this novel, in which you will find that the characters are driven by this sense of adventure. So let's see. The title of the first chapter is The Wrong Door. Now, why do we use a door? Well, surely we use a door to go in or to come out. Now, sometimes it so happens that you have a number of doors, similar doors, and you want to enter a door, and then after entering the door you realize that it wasn't the room you were actually looking for. So we can say you actually entered the wrong door. In the last class we discussed about the title that the novel involves The Magician's Nephew. It involves magic. So you can, I would say, you can let your goosebumps grow and be ready that something unexpected is going to happen in this chapter through the wrong door. Right, the writer begins the story in an amazing way. Let me read the first paragraph of this first chapter. This is a story about something that happened long ago when your grandfather was a child. You see, the writer, right at the beginning of the story, the writer involves the readers, right? So whoever reads the story will feel that this is a story about something that happened long ago when my grandfather was a child. Well, that's interesting. So that's a good technique that writers generally use to involve the readers right at the outset of the story. Then it says, it is a very important story because it shows how all the comings and goings between our own world and the land of Narnia first began. What it means is, the story will tell you how the communication between our world and the world of Narnia, whether it exists or not, that's a different question. It's a fantasy novel, so the land of Narnia actually doesn't exist. So the story shows how the communication between our world and the world of Narnia first began. Very important to understand the Narnia series, right? Alright, so the story took place when your grandfather was a child. And in those days, there lived a girl called Polly Plummer. She lived in London. So the name of this character is Polly Plummer. Now, she lived in one of a long row of houses, and the houses were joined together. What kind of houses I'm talking about? It's kind of like this. So in England, you will see that some houses are joined together, and our character, Polly Plummer, lived in one of those houses. And one morning she was in the garden, and suddenly she found a boy coming out of the garden next door. The boy scrambled up. What is the meaning of scrambled up? Well, scramble up is to walk with difficulty. So the boy came scrambling up, walking with difficult moves. Probably he is tired, probably he is hurt. And the boy's name is Diggory. The first character is Polly Plummer, the second character is Diggory. D-O-D-I-G-O-R-Y. Diggory. And the face of the boy was grubby. Now, what is grubby? Try to guess. The face of the boy was grubby. Grubby means dirty. The face of the boy was grubby. Then Polly and Diggory, they introduced themselves, and then Polly started making fun of Diggory. Why? Because his face was grubby. Then Diggory gave a good answer. He said he lived in a village, and then from the village he came to a beastly hole like London. The hole is actually H-O-L-E. He compared London with beastly hole. So a boy from a village came to the town and comparing the town with a beastly hole. Now the girl, Polly Plummer, she became very angry. She said, London isn't a hole. And she said it indignantly. What is indignantly? If you notice carefully, you will see how I spoke the sentence. London isn't a hole. Am I saying it, or when I say this, was I happy or I was angry? Sure, I was angry. So when I say, Polly said indignantly, London isn't a hole, what it means is, Polly said it angrily. Polly said it indignantly, or Polly said angrily. So indignantly means angry. Alright. And then Diggory, our next character, he informed Polly about his family. That his father was away in India, he lived with his uncle and aunt, and his mother was ill, so his uncle looked after his mother. And his mother was soon going to die. So you can easily guess that his mother was suffering from a grave disease. So, and also he informed that his uncle was a little bit mad. He was not a normal person, he was mad. So that's how Polly and Diggory, they got to know each other. And they became friends. Now it was one of the wettest and coldest summers that they were going to experience. And when the weather is rough, what do? We stay at home. So Diggory and Polly, they were staying at home because of the rough weather. And when you were staying home, what do? As children, what do? You do something called indoor exploration. Now what is exploration? When you're home, you have nothing to do, you do something called exploration. What is exploration? It's simple, it's traveling. Exploration is the act of traveling in a certain place to look for something in that place. So for example, I'm a teacher of primary school Dhaka, but I haven't seen each and every room of this school. So I can say, well, tomorrow I'm going to explore. Tomorrow I'm going to do exploration inside the primary school. So that can be exploration. Exploration can be indoor, it can be outdoor as well. So they were doing indoor exploration, and they found that Polly and Diggory, they found that each and every house ends with a small room. Each and every room. In each and every house, there's a small room ends with a door. We call it the attic door. And through this door, there was a tunnel. Through the end of the door, you can go to a tunnel. And in that tunnel, let's say Polly lives in this house, and in this tunnel she keeps a lot of things, like a cistern, like candles, her books, and other things. Generally, what do we keep in an attic? We keep unnecessary things, we store unnecessary things. So Polly kept a lot of things, and one of them is cistern. It's because of the cistern Polly could not see behind the tunnel, or could not see behind the cistern what is there in the tunnel. Right? So a cistern is a container to keep water. Alright. Now, Diggory, as he's a boy, I'm not saying girls are not like that, but generally boys do have some kind of mind that they want to explore, they want to discover something new. That doesn't actually insult girls. So Diggory was having that kind of mind to travel, to adventure. So he was interested about the tunnel. He asked Polly, "Do you know how long this tunnel goes on for?" And Polly said, "I don't know. My father said that this tunnel ends with a room, and that room has been empty for years, and nobody lived in that house for years." But Diggory was interested, and also Polly. They, for the first time, they are interested to find what is there in that room where the tunnel ends. So they made up their mind, and they were thinking of a number of possibilities. Whenever you heard that a house has been empty for years, what kind of possibilities popping into your mind? Well, you may say that the house is haunted. That's one possibility. You may say that some jinns or spirits live in that house. That's also one possibility. So Diggory and Polly, they were thinking of a number of possibilities. Probably in that house, in that room that has been empty for years, probably it is haunted, or probably it is not actually empty, or probably someone lived in that room in secret, someone coming in and out at night. Maybe some criminals lived in that room, since nobody knew. Right? So these are possibilities they were coming up with. And then they made up their mind that they would travel through the tunnel and they would reach the room. And each of them took a candle, and then they started their journey through the tunnel. The tunnel was dark and dusty and drafty. So, the moment they reached the end of the tunnel, they found a door. You see, the title of the chapter is The Long Door. So they found the door, and on that door there was no bolt or handle to open it. So Diggory pushed it hard, and the door swung open. And when it swung open, because of the daylight, the children, Polly and Diggory, they had to blink for a while. And then, to their horror and shock, they discovered that the room was not empty. The room was a well-furnished room. All the walls of that room were lined with shelves, and the shelves were full of books. And they also found a fireplace, and then a high-backed armchair. They found ink pots or ink bottles. They found pens and sealing wax and a microscope. But what drew Polly's attention most was a wooden tray. A wooden tray. On that tray, they found a number of rings. The rings were in pairs, a yellow ring and a green ring. And then again, a yellow ring and a green ring. And the rings were very bright. Polly was fascinated by rings. But then Diggory was afraid. He said, "We should bunk this place before anyone comes in." So, what is bunk? He said they had to bunk the place. What is bunk? Means to leave. We must leave this place before anyone comes. Right. The moment he said so, Polly was interested about the rings, and she said, "What do you think those are? What do you think those rings are?" And Diggory said, "Oh, come on, the sooner." And then suddenly they heard footsteps. They heard footsteps, and within seconds they found a demonic figure, a tall figure standing tall. And they found that it was Diggory's uncle, Uncle Andrew. He was tall, Uncle Andrew was tall and very thin, and he had a long, clean-shaven face and pointed nose. Pointed nose. So Uncle Andrew, when he found the children, he said, "There! Now my fool of a sister can't get at you. In other words, now I've got you and nobody's going to save you from me. The children were frightened. They stepped backwards, but Uncle Andrew was quick. He came quickly and he shut all the doors. And then he said, I am delighted to see you. 2 children are just what I wanted. So the children were frightened and they begged Uncle Andrew to let them go. But Uncle Andrew said, no, I wanted 2 children and I'm doing an experiment, so I'm not going to let you go. But the children said, we promise you after the dinner we will come back to you and then do whatever you like to do. Uncle Andrew agreed. But soon Uncle Andrew found that Polly was fascinated by the rings. He said, would you like a ring? And Polly said, oh yeah, a yellow one or a green one? But Uncle Andrew said, no, you can have the yellow one only, not the green one. So Polly was going towards the rings and then she discovered that a kind of humming sound was coming from the rings. And she said so. And Uncle Andrew said, what a funny, fancy my dear, and then he laughed. So Polly was coming closer to the rings. And at that moment, Diggory shouted, Polly, don't be a fool. Don't touch them, don't touch the rings. But it was too late. The moment he spoke so, at that moment Polly touched the rings. And without a flash, without a noise, without a warning, there was no Polly. Polly's got vanished. So the writer ends the first chapter with a kind of suspense. We don't know where Polly is. We don't know what happened to Polly. We don't know why had Polly got vanished. We don't know what kind of special power the rings have, right? If you want to get the answers to those questions, kindly read the second chapter. That's one of your homeworks. And also, you will be given a worksheet. You must complete the worksheet at home and submit it on Thursday. That's all for today's lesson. Assalamu alaikum.